Welcome to another episode of Bushwick Bears Petty Crime Review. Today on the podcast, we are talking criminal speeding.
That's right. And to join us, we got host of the Lou Perez podcast. I'll give you one guess. It's Lou Perez. Not just regular speeding, but the kind where you can potentially kill somebody, I guess, is the thought behind criminal speeding.
Yeah, I wonder if this goes back to our discussion about the difference between like state to state naming things, reckless op versus reckless driving versus criminal driving.
Criminal speeding.
Criminal speeding.
Reckless operation.
Reckless operation
of a vehicle.
Which I never even heard before.
I talk too often.
And then criminal speeding is what, like is it double? Is it 30 above?
Well. So I was in Arizona when I did the criminal speeding, and for those of you who don't know me, I live a pretty boring life. Like there's nothing exciting. Like I'm probably gonna be the most boring guest that you had on here. But when
don't say that now.
Let them
find out at the end
just
if
figure,
anything.
just
Yeah,
figure it
because
out.
my impression of you is I was going to tell like you're the most put together comic and comedy person I've met since I met Stephen Colbert, and like no, just because like you're like one of the few people in comedy I actually think comes across like cool and collected. Most of us are fucking psychos and losers and schizos, and like you give off the different oeuvre of that. So I wouldn't call it boring. It's probably smart.
Adult. You come off as an adult
Look,
in the
man,
room.
I wear khaki pants with pleats. Okay, because why buy new pants? I've had these for a really long time. Let's be smart about it.
I actually have right now 2 pairs of pants, one of which is a pair of khakis, where the pants are fine, but the pockets have holes that I've literally tried to sew back together because I'm like, I like these khakis. I don't want to buy new khakis.
Yeah.
And then if I professionally got somebody to fix the pockets, it would cost as much as new khakis. So that doesn't make sense either. So I keep resewing the pockets on my khakis. And right now, if I put my phone in it, it will fall to the floor.
But I think there's something where when you find that pair of pants that just fits, you marry them. That's it. And then you just deal with it. You keep sending them to rehab.
And you hope that you don't get too fat for that pair of pants.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. I don't even want to try on my tuxedo I got married in. You know, I feel like I haven't put that on in a while. I don't know. Is that a? Do women put on their wedding dresses like every now and then?
Yeah, for
women
sure.
do that as a thing of like, 20 years later and my dress still fits, sort of thing. My mom did it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like it was in Uncut Gems too. That was like the big thing of like. Where Adam Sandler was like, he's trying. That's when he decided to try to talk his way back into his wife's good graces. Was when she still looked good for her age in her wedding dress.
Right. But you were in Arizona. That's already pretty good, right? Because points don't transfer if it's from out of the tri-state area, right?
I've no idea.
Where did you hear that?
No. I'm pretty sure. Somebody else can look it up, but I'm pretty sure that's true. Like, if you get points for speeding outside of, I believe, like New York, New Jersey, it's more than tri-state. It might be like Connecticut and Pennsylvania. But like, if you get speeding outside of that, you just pay the fine. Like, you don't get points on your license.
I'm gonna go rob a bank in Arizona. Like, hey, I was out of the tri-state area, guys. Okay, with speeding laws, I could probably see that. Yeah,
I'm not making
are
it
petty.
up.
I know.
I've done it.
It's just surprising to hear. But now I think about it, we are a petty crime podcast. I don't think your petty crime record should follow you everywhere, I guess, especially traffic shit.
Yeah.
Were you in robbing a bank in Arizona?
I was doing something just like it. I was in at a comedy festival, stand-up festival called Big Pine. So it was like the Big Pine Comedy Festival. I think it was the first time they had it. It was in Flagstaff.
Yeah.
So I had gone from I think it was in Las Vegas at an event, and then I went down to I think I rented a car, drove down to Arizona, and then I was living in L.A. at the time, so I was supposed to drive from Flagstaff back to L.A., and on the way back, I had another comedian with me, and he was a black comedian. So when I got pulled over, I immediately thought of, like, the whole driving while black, but I was driving with black. You know?
Right,
So
yeah,
that's
yeah,
what
yeah.
I was thinking about.
You're an accessory to a crime.
Yeah, and this poor guy, man, like we had never really like hung out. We'd seen each other in L.A. and he'd done like my open mic and my shows and stuff like that. So here he is, like taking a ride back with me for I don't even know how many hours it was, and I get pulled over, and he was just silent the whole time, just trying not to, just
Spark any attention.
Yeah.
or anything like that. Because for one, getting pulled over just sucks.
But it's also it's Arizona, right?
And getting pulled over, like this is the first time he's in a car with me, you know.
Right.
So it was crazy. But as far as the criminal speed, I think it's like 20. Is it 20 miles over the speed limit? 20 or 30 miles over the speed limit?
It varies by state.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was allegedly doing like 96 in a
25.
in a 25 in a fucking just all bumps. You know,
That is a youthful speed. I gotta say that makes me so uncomfortable now. Like I don't know the last like I just don't drive fast. My younger brother drives faster than I do.
I drive slow, speed limit the whole time.
I'll do like 5 to 10 over the speed limit, let's say. But there were moments when I was like 17, 18. I destroyed my first car, my Pontiac Bonneville. I was talking about this earlier. Like we used to play bumper cards in the parking lot, but also like I have definitely taken that car to like. I'm not gonna say $120, but definitely over 100. Like like well over 100. It had a like V6, like pretty sizable V6. It was huge. It was a boat, but it went. I know I took it to at least like 106, 107 one time.
Well, you know what part of my defense was, and this is a legit defense. It wasn't just like, oh, let me just make up stuff and all that. So it was a rental car that I was driving, right? My normal car that I normally drove in L.A. was a smart car. Right? Tiny little smart car.
Yeah.
So in a smart car, when you hit 60,
Yeah.
you start approaching 70,
It starts to shake, right?
shake like
yeah.
a motherfucker. So I'm going way too fast, right? In the rental car, and I forget which car it was, but it was a regular car. Right?
Yeah.
So we're talking regular car, smooth, just straight. Like it seemed like it was recently like paved by Jesus, just fucking a roadway, desert. Nobody,
right?
Like no traffic
You're meant
whatsoever.
to speed on that road,
and I'm going, and I look down. It's like, oh shit! I had no idea that I was actually going. That I was allegedly going that fast. I had no idea that I was allegedly going that fast.
Yeah.
And when I was pulled over, the police officer, I guess this kind of made it awkward. So I pulled over to the right, and I was expecting the police officer to come up on my side. Right on the driver's side, but that would have been dangerous because he would have been
on the highway side.
Yeah.
But
so
now he's going to.
He goes around to the friggin' comedian,
passenger
side. So the
side,
comedian's like he's rolling it down. So he's just in the middle of this police officer talking to me, and the police officer said that he had been chasing me for like he had I forget how many minutes or something like that in order for him to catch up to me.
Which is believable if he's standing still and you're going past him at 96 allegedly.
Yeah.
It's going to take a bit to catch up to that.
Yeah.
And one thing I would totally some advice to give. At no point did I ever admit that I was speeding. At no point did I ever admit that I had committed an act of crime or anything like that. And I remember the one thing that I said to him specifically was, I'm just trying to get home. Like that's what I said, because, anything that you admit in the moment will be used against you, right? So it's not worth, for people out there who are like, well, if I just admit it and the cop is like, thinks that I'm a good guy. It's like, no, that's not their job. Like their job isn't for you to make them believe you're a good guy. Their job is to get you for what
they're fundraising.
Yeah,
exactly.
Their job, they're there to actually like contextualize whatever you're doing to suit their own needs.
Yeah.
Basically, yeah. And even if you are like, admissible to a truth or something like that, and it is like fairly innocent, they use all that whatever money you had to pay into the system. It went to helping maintain that beautiful road.
and so there were one thing that came up. So I had to hire an attorney, right?
Right.
So for one, getting pulled over sucks. It's scary being told that that you may be charged with, criminal, speeding is really scary. When I got to L.A., the idea was that I might have to go back to Arizona in order to appear in court. So that's really scary. So I went and I tried to find attorneys in Arizona. Unfortunately, I was able to find a really good firm, to represent me. And when I was talking to them, and we were trying to put together the defense of the case, one of the things that they always want to do is they want to run a test on the equipment that was used, right? So whatever radar that
right,
they
if
used,
they find something faulty,
exactly, and it could be off or whatever. So
a vision test for the cop, perhaps.
It could be. Well, it's interesting because I think in some states, a policeman can pull you over just by sight. So you could be going by and they could say, well, from my experience, you were going over.
I was following you and I had to go 80 in order to keep up with you or whatever.
Or even the, the initial, pass by, they could say, oh, well,
I know what 80 feels like.
Yeah. So, so I wasn't sure if that was the case in Arizona, but one of the things that really pissed me off was, according to the police officer, he said that I had admitted that I was speeding, and he had said he was saying that he was in a rush to get home or something like that. I had never said that. I said I'm just trying to get home. So here I was, sort of experiencing something where, and I don't have any history with law enforcement as far as getting arrested or anything like that, and I'm like, wow. Here I have an officer already stretching the truth or outright lying.
Right. In a relatively low stakes scenario.
Exactly. Now imagine if there were a higher stakes.
Can I ask you a quick question? Did they make that cop swear in on a Bible?
No, we didn't. I don't think we never went to trial. So I ended up getting a hearing with a judge eventually. But
I'm sorry. I asked just because I had to go to traffic court in Coney Island to fight a ticket. I got a ticket as a passenger.
They make you swear in on a Nathan's hot dog.
Yeah, yeah. And they made me swear on a Bible, but they didn't make the cop swear. Right. And so I said I didn't do it, and the cop didn't have to do it, and he said I did. And I'm like, well, why are you gonna? I said, why are you gonna take his word? He ain't had to swear on a Bible. What is this bullshit? And they're just like, they're an officer of the law. They don't have to, blah, 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 sort of thing. And I was like, this is just a fucking scam.
Right.
I was like, where do I have to go pay my goddamn money? I was indignant.
Did you get a Nathan's hot dog afterwards?
No. It was in the winter. It was not. I don't even think it was open at the time. I did go play video games.
but I think rightfully so. Your indignation is merited because, we all know that, for the most part, traffic court and parking tickets and all that, and we could talk later about a parking ticket that I fought, but it is a scam. It's a way people they get in these situations and then they immediately start balancing, well, how much is it going to cost to just pay this off versus how much is this going to cost me to actually fight this, and anytime,
my time.
Yeah, and anytime you're in that situation, it doesn't sound like justice is actually being carried out. It's
like you're playing a game.
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to make you as uncomfortable as possible, and then until you break. And so with the attorneys that I have, we start to put together my case. And for one, it's coming from I wasn't lying. I was coming from a genuine place of it's a rental car. I'm used to driving this car. They're like, okay, that's a good argument. The other thing that we started to do is to reach out to people who could attest to my character, right? So I started getting.
This is a lot for speeding. I guess criminal speeding, right? Yeah.
So so I started reaching out to people, who could vouch for me and say, "Oh, Lou's a good guy." So I didn't have a record, so I think that helps. I didn't have any speeding tickets or anything like that. So this was, this was an unordinary thing that happened, right? So I reached out to people. I reached out to my boss at the time, Erin. She wrote up a nice letter for me. I had a buddy of mine who had been an attorney for a few years. He was able to vouch for me, and I believe I may have had like 2 or 3 other people, right? So it was that, and then I started reaching back and started thinking like, oh, that the year before, or it might have been that year. That's when Nepal had a big earthquake. And so, well, I did a benefit show for Nepal, so I could bring that up. So here I am, just like basically saying, look, I'm a really good person, blah 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 blah. And
here's this letter from Jeffrey Epstein.
So here I am making not only the case of what happened, but also of who I am, right?
Yeah.
And fortunately for me, it went, it worked, and I was able to go to traffic school, and there were no points at it, and more importantly, no jail time, right? But it got me thinking of, wait a minute, what if I wasn't in the position that I'm in, where I do have those kinds of relationships with people, that they'd be willing to, stick their neck out and say, no, I'll vouch for this guy's character.
Yeah.
What if I was somebody who my boss hated me, or I just lost my job, right? Or I had a falling out.
Right, yeah.
What if I didn't, what if my, the friends that I have weren't the type of friends who, are, do have a law degree, then I'm fucked. And it really, and I didn't realize until like years later looking back at it, but it's like, fuck, man, that's the case for so many people in the justice system.
Yeah.
Who get caught up because it's like they don't have people to vouch for them.
Yeah.
Right. And it is like, it seems like a pay your way out of scenario thing. I was just thinking about this on the way over. The result seems like so far the result of Bruce Springsteen's DUI is that he got a podcast with Obama. Right. I haven't heard telltale.
I didn't know Bruce Springsteen got a DUI.
Exactly. He got a Dewey. He was drunk driving, which, whatever. I'm not trying to sit there and slam him for that. We all make mistakes.
I'll slam him.
No.
Overrated.
But like a little bit. He's no Tom Petty. But it is like, I think it's like, well, I'm Bruce Springsteen. I'm an American icon or whatever. I can pay my way out of this sort of thing. But like, somebody who actually is poor from New Jersey or an affected minority that he sings about quite often that could ruin their lives. You know what I mean? In legal fees and the stigma of being charged with one, all that sort of stuff. And so it's like, I don't want Bruce Springsteen to have to get dragged across the coals, but it's like, obviously I don't know how you really correct that sort of system, but it's like it should be an affected outcome, the same for like everybody.
Yeah, and even just something as simple as finding that law firm to represent me. I think I spoke with two lawyers there that were handling my case, and I was able to front the money. I was able to to do that, and yeah, man. I mean, like it's really scary when you just think about all of the people who are caught up in it, and again, going back, this cop lied about the situation.
Right.
It's like, and like
he's
you said,
trying to
like
meet a
such
quota.
a low stakes thing.
Right.
Come on, man.
What do you do? Well, because my contrarian side is like, it sucks, and it would be terrible for people to have their lives ruined by it. How do you make it enough stakes that people aren't treating the highways like the Autobahn?
I don't know.
And it's not necessarily bad, right? Like,
I mean, I thought the same question.
It's not like the Autobahn is full of, I don't know. Maybe it is. I haven't heard of the Autobahn having like a higher vehicle fatality rate than in America. I bet it doesn't.
Yeah, and it's also, I mean, it really is a thing where it's discretionary by the state, because Montana, there are certain roads, they don't have a speed limit.
Yeah, because there's like nobody there.
Right, there's nobody there, whatever, and like it's all measured basically by whatever. It's like we had a guest on who was from the D.C. area. D.C. is like one of the most heavily, like those traffic corridors and everything along the highway and the HOV lanes. It's like, I mean, it costs so much money to travel through there and to travel through unencumbered and stuff like that. It's clear like this is just a way to collect revenue from people to fund more like state stuff. And there has to be a compromise between like, a certain level of reasonable tax and a reasonable return on the investment you get back from society. But it doesn't seem that way, or at least equitable for people across the board.
Right, it becomes playing a game.
And also it's a question of, well, what's really important here? Is it road safety, or is it road safety, but we really just want to find a way to make money? Because I think I read this before. It might have been a guy named Radley Balco who was
wrote
was talking
the
about it.
militarization. Yeah,
and he covered other stuff. So he covers like the
Thinking
militarization.
of Balco the dog.
He's a hero.
Yeah,
He's
what
a
a
hero.
really
What a good
elevate
author.
the conversation.
So he wrote about like the militarization of police, but when he used to write for Reason magazine, he would often talk about things like drunk driving and that sort of thing. And the question being like, I wonder, does speed necessarily mean that you're being reckless? If you're on a straightaway, going over the speed limit, is that necessarily dangerous as opposed to going, swerving in and out of cars or, riding people's
Right.
asses?
It feels subjective.
So there's, I think there's a question there of like, how do you, get the, make sure that it's safe, but also punishing people for putting other lives at risk.
So I've gotten a couple of subtweets in my day about from commies about how libertarianism is like dumb. It's a dumb philosophy. Libertarian comics are dumb. Not that I identify with any of that sort of thing, but like it is, but it's also just as dumb as communism. But like out of the two, one seems to be the only one that's interested in making sure that you don't get screwed over by the system. You know what I mean? And like whenever I look at these sort of things from like the libertarian prism, it isn't because I want to screw people over or sell children opium. It's because I just don't think that the state has its citizens in its best interest. I think the state kind of exists to propagate the state at this point in America. It isn't necessarily a reflection of the best interests of everybody. And so while like it can seem kind of silly, I at least appreciate the philosophy that's like, hey, let's get these guys off our fucking backs a little bit. And that's applicable to affected minorities most of all. Look at like we just repealed in New York all the weed laws. Imagine if you were black and 15 years ago you got a 15-year sentence for weed, and then they legalize it the day you get out of jail.
Are we allowed to imagine ourselves as black men?
I
don't know.
I do it daily, really. That's my daily affirmation.
Imaginary blackface.
Imaginary,
that's the new crime. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of this stuff is temporary, right? Like that's kind of an interesting thing. Is like we're at this precipice where like how many speed we were talking about this last time. Like how many speed tickets are there going to be in 10 years when everybody? I mean, maybe 10 years is optimistic, but I think it's possible that everybody's in self-driving cars. And there's
you
no.
have that bet going with our
I know,
friend Greg about
I do.
that.
I bet a mutual friend of ours that self-driving cars are coming sooner than he thinks. But that will put a lot of this stuff in a temporary state where, like, yeah, there's only so long people are going to need different lawyers and stuff for speeding tickets until we're all just driving in cars that are being driven by somebody. Although I guess it'll probably take longer for poor people to get self-driving cars.
Sorry, pores.
I have a friend of mine, and she was a guest on my podcast named Amy Alcon, and Amy is a libertarian. She's in California, and she something that she does is she works as a mediator for people. So if two people, say like two neighbors, are having a problem, with say the height of their fence or something like that,
Yeah.
rather than going through the court system, they could, agree to meet with this mediator who will listen to both sides and try to come together, come up with a compromise that both people, agree to.
Like an arbitration.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds like something that I'd like to see a lot more of, and obviously it's a little different, I think, with the, highway system and all that, but, the libertarian anarchist in me is like, we'll privatize the roads and then we'll deal with it, deal with it that way. But there is something to be said of when you are an individual, even if you do have the privileges that I have, going up against the state, because you're not just going up against the police officer, you're also going up against the prosecutor, and you're also going up against the judge ultimately. I know the judge is supposed to give everybody a fair shake, but come on.
Right.
He sees a lot of you.
Yeah.
And only one of the state of Arizona.
Yeah. Right.
Well, I mean, if you sat there and tell me on paper, like, hey, we're going to take the same percentage of taxes that we do from you, but instead of like the government, I don't know, supplying various counterinsurgencies with weapons across the globe in order to further some kind of capitalist agenda versus like, oh, we're just going to build, high-speed light rails between cities so everybody can function more. I don't know. I would be like a little bit more for it, but it just like never happens really that way. Even in the well-intended, like communist like places like
or
that.
even just look at California. They were trying to build that high-speed rail project for years now, and I think they're like millions, if not billions, of dollars over budget. It's insane.
Right.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of this thing like everybody keeps talking about like $15 an hour. And I like how it's been placed upon the burden of ensuring that people have a high standard of living has been placed on the business owners and small business owners of the world instead of on the people who spend your tax money to let your cities fucking crumble. Like if you like had like, there used to be a time like, and I granted there is corporate greed and there is like that sort of shitty greed out of people and everything. I'm not going to deny that. I'm not a fucking idiot, but at the same time, it's like, I mean, the states only kind of, and the people in power have only kind of grown more powerful and have more. How many billionaires and millionaires are in Congress?
I'm surprised you guys aren't both more into crypto. Because a lot of the solutions are coming from that space, even just like something like arbitration over a fence. The whole point is using, I'll try to avoid too much of a rant, but the whole point is using this system that allows not to have a trusted third party like the government to say where your property line is or what your fence should be, but it's something that objectively says both people have agreed to this type of thing. And supposedly it's the future of like nation states in a way where you basically can use smart contracts and these types of things to get on the same page with people that might be, scattered throughout the country, if not the world, and then those people combine together to buy property, and you can basically like have a government that circumvents the government.
Can I just bring up something?
Yeah, the only reason I don't have crypto money is because I have no money at all. So you have to have regular money in order to have crypto money. And I'm a comic.
I technically have crypto because Boris got me involved in what was it, Coinbase, I think a while back, and I think he was like sharing his link, like, hey man, you want
we both get free crypto if you sign up with this.
But I definitely, I think my limitations with crypto is just my understanding of it. More than anything. But
my only crypto is that Coinstar, and it's the digital printout.
Today I posted. I said I used to think cryptocurrency was when fake rich dudes would trick women to sleeping with them. Like,
oh yeah, that's like, good. Yeah, the Winkle vibe.
But here's an issue. Two issues that have sort of come up. So one of them is when during the lockdown, right? Alternate side parking rules in Brooklyn and in the city were suspended for a long time. Yeah. So I got really used to having like, a parking spot for a long time, right?
Hell yeah, me too.
Yeah.
And then when they brought back alternate side parking, the meter maids, as we used to call them, just went like it was almost like they sent in the special forces.
I got tickets twice since then.
They came out like the Gestapo.
Yeah, and
there were 6 of them in my neighborhood in one day, and I sat in my car, and they would look so upset when I was sitting in my car, like, "What are you gonna do? Try and take me? I'll just start driving away."
and it got so bad where one day I came out and saw that I had a ticket, right? And it was on a day where alternate side parking rules were suspended, and I was parked in a place where I should not have gotten a ticket, right?
Yeah.
And they still gave me a ticket. I believe I might. Yeah, it was one ticket that I got, and I was like, this is bullshit. And I started asking. I went on Nextdoor to actually ask, like, to warn people, like, hey, warning, this stuff is going around. One of the neighbors responded to my thread and said that she was trying to fight this, but the judge basically threw it out, and she cited a specific rule in the parking enforcement handbook or whatever. So I went and I found that rule, and the rule said specifically, like on alternate side parking days when rules are suspended, people are basically allowed to park in these, in these places. And
That's fucking awesome.
And I went online and fought my ticket, right? I ended up winning it, right?
Yeah.
But here was an example of this woman had gone to a judge who basically was throwing out her case and saying you don't have a case. But yet I went to another judge and they said, yeah, you're right. You're no ticket for you.
Yeah.
And then after that, there were days when I was, I wasn't even patrolling my neighborhood, but just walking around my neighborhood and seeing, the traffic cops come to write people tickets for the same exact thing. And here I was being like, yo, you can't do that. And I was citing the case law to them and said, you can't do that. You can't be doing this.
You're a regular Goodwill Hunting.
And this fucking guy.
I love a vigilante that just fights shitty meter maids.
And when the guy had said something about, oh, okay, I won't give it to you. And I'm like, no, you can't give it to me.
Right.
But you looked at at all the other cars parked there, they all had tickets in it, right? And they're playing that game of, well, how many people are going to fight this?
Right. If 10% of them don't fight it, that's already.
We made money on it. And then also, it was one of those things where I don't know how many more people are educated on that, right? So it's a fucked up system where people are taking advantage of people, but then when it comes to your day in court, you can't even be guaranteed that the judge or whatever will honor the law,
right?
Yeah, that'll be consistent whatsoever.
Yeah. Also, I just want to say one thing. As a libertarian, that is the closest I've ever gotten to defeating the state. That was it. I beat one ticket, and I feel like fucking Thomas Paine.
Yeah, the thing I've always loved about the commie argument is that because the same people who do this sort of thing are always talking about the American government's so fucked up, and then it's like, and then in turn you're going, so let's give them all the power. Like if you want to do this communism thing with the redistribution of goods and services and create all these, because you have to have an authoritarian figure who decides the things for you at that point. It's
Derek,
just such a
I
silly
think you're not
idea.
understanding that it'll be different this time.
Right, you're right. Yeah, my bad. History's been wrong this whole time.
Well, you know what's scarier or funnier now is the reality of the same people calling for those things for the collective ownership of the means of production. At least when the communists when the Bolshevik Revolution happened, you had people who were working in factories. You had people who, were smith workers. You had workers, people who actually made shit. Nowadays, you have people calling for the collective ownership of the means production, who don't even know how to make shit.
Right,
So
yeah.
it's like you know what? You're a carpenter, right? Yeah, we want to collectivize that, but none of us are carpenters.
Right,
So
yeah.
you want to be in control of something that you have no fucking idea
Right.
how to even control.
I was I think I texted both of you about this, where I was thinking about how so many people I know who are landlords are evil and housing should be a socialized good will call someone on Fiverr to so much as put a shelf or picture on the wall.
Yeah.
It's if you're going to own a home, you're going to need to learn how to mount your fucking TV, buddy.
Right. And then how are you going to pay for, whatever. It's just such a silly thing. And and I can see where if you look at the last 4 years with Trump in office and everything like that, the amount of people who are misconstrued as being libertarian, and representative of Trumpism versus actual hey, we just don't want you fucking us over.
I mean, also Trump is in no way a libertarian.
Right, yeah. He really, absolutely. From what I can tell. But just because you don't stand AOC or Biden, that puts you in that camp.
Right.
For whatever reason. It just becomes so polarized.
I think everyone will calm down a little bit. They're already starting to calm down a little bit.
They shouldn't, though, because Biden's just as bad as Trump. So, why stop now? We have another problem. Yeah, nobody's doing anything about it.
Get back to that border and cry.
Yeah, Jesus Christ.
So, a question I want to pose to you guys too is so recently, as recently as yesterday, my wife and I we were driving back from New Jersey, and then we start prowling around the neighborhood looking for a spot, right? And we find what would have been 2 amazing spots for a car, right? But there happens to be a turquoise Vespa parked perfectly so that you could not fit in front of it or behind it, right?
Yeah.
So this is happening on a public street where, it's free parking, right?
Yeah.
And it's an obvious scam. Like this person has put their Vespa there so they could hold a spot, for somebody, maybe a family member, a friend, or whatnot.
Just to propose an alternate hypothesis, is it possible that someone was parked differently next to the Vespa and they moved away?
No, I mean the way that this was,
It looked like they were just holding it.
It's like a real car wouldn't be able to fit behind it, and it was like say like 3/4 of a car length, so it took, the question that I was asking is, well, what do you do when somebody is just flouting, and taking advantage of this free parking here and being a complete dick? Because big part of me wanted to just be like, well, I should just ram this Vespa and then see what
I was
what
gonna
happens.
say, in an ideal world, I have like Derek and maybe the 2 of you maybe with me, and we fucking move that Vespa.
There was a guy in Flatbush who had a Vespa, and if it was in my way, I would drag it. And push it next to another car.
Yeah,
because it's like you're not going to take up an entire space with your gay motorcycle.
And I came back. Right. After I'd found a spot, I was like, let me just walk by because I wanted to film it actually, to like say a little something, to be an angry old man. And what do you know? The Vespa was moved, right? And then there was
another car
perfectly parked.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
it was like inches from each other. And I'm like, you motherfucker, man.
Yep.
And I took their license plate. So if anybody out there wants,
I will say, just to admit to being a hypocrite, I can 100% see a world where I show up and I see that Vespa and I'm like, this motherfucking asshole. And I can 100% see a world where my friend has a Vespa and I ask him to hold a parking spot for me.
100%.
Yeah. I mean, that's the constant negotiation that you're going to have to do, like, kind of in society anyways. So why do we need to bring the third party into it as much, and like, I don't know.
Well, in the neighborhood, right, there is a piece of shit like 1980 something Volvo that's not well maintained at all, right? And an old man drives this thing, and as far as I can tell, this old man's existence consists of taking this piece of shit junker from this side of the street to this side of the street, and then moves it back, right?
Yeah.
And
I know a guy like that.
And he probably has nothing else going on in his life.
Yeah.
There's got to be something there where if he stops doing this, the dementia
The
just
rest
gets
of
stronger.
it'll,
Or maybe we're all living in his mind, and then like that is like sort of the work, like the clockwork that needs to happen in order for us to survive, whatever. But it's like, oh, that's pretty amazing that you're in that position where you can do that. You're in a privileged position where you are able to do that every time that you need, as opposed to if you have a couple who both have to work and they aren't able to sit in their car for the hour and a half or 2 hours in the morning.
I'm dealing with the same thing.
Yeah.
I had, so my parking situation is when I moved in here, there's a driveway, and then I was hoping to get that parking spot, but then my landlord had promised that parking spot to this guy who's the mayor of the block. To his credit, he's lived here forever, and he like does the snow plow and clears stuff out and puts the garbage in the right bins and stuff like that. So he does something, but also he's got like 5 cars, like both of his kids live here. He's got one car that's like also an old clunker that he doesn't even move. It's just covered with garbage in his own garage. Then he's got like I found out recently his daughter's got 2 cars. She's got a work car and a leisure car. So he's got cars like all on the block that he's always home to move. And he's got the driveway of my house and his own driveway, which he's got his car and like whatever this clunker is behind it. And it's, I I feel bad because he's a nice guy, and I have such a resentment towards him.
He's the mayor.
He's the
He's
mayor.
the mayor.
I put the garbage where the garbage is supposed to go.
Yeah.
I'm the mayor of Greenpoint, huh?
And you know the worst part is I found recently he rents too. I thought maybe he like at least owns the building and like lives here. He's been renting this shit. He's like paying like $500 a month for an entire building because he's
I
rents it.
rent
God
the
bless
building.
him.
I own the cars.
Yeah.
That's well, I think really strong cases have been made for some type of pay to park policy in the city. When it comes to like these spots. So.
Like pay to park on the street.
Yeah, to have either a
I mean, we
spot
currently
for
do,
yourself.
right? Whenever we get ticketed, so might as well make it official.
Yeah, because like we have the option to someday sign up for a garage in our building. There's a waiting list for it or whatever, but it's like $250 a month. Well, 4 parking tickets is $240 a month.
Yep.
So
yep.
it's like we're gonna just stop sweating it when we have to go back. Like we're gonna try and like be smart and whatever, but there's like I don't want to spend my life like moving my car around or whatever.
It sucks. And I briefly had a parking spot from my neighbor's driveway because he didn't have somebody with a car there, and then somebody moved in with a car.
The mayor moved in.
No, it did. Yeah. Oh my God! If that guy took another spot, I would lose it. Can we call this episode instead of criminal speeding, criminal parking? Because that's a really curious crime. But yeah, I wonder if they charge to park on the street. I mean, obviously that would screw a lot of people over who probably spent a lot of time avoiding spending any money on tickets. At this point, sometimes if I have to leave for like a week or something, we're actually leaving to California, and I asked the friends to move it across the street, but I'm also like, you know what? Worst case scenario, I'll get a $60 ticket, and that is going to be the cheapest way I can park my car in the city for a week.
Yeah.
So anywhere else, I'd pay substantially more.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, like at that point, like who cares? You know, it is just like annoying that we have to go through it, but I would say so. We got into like a whole philosophical sort of bent about the nature. We often do this of like the nature of crime and like what everybody's role in of itself and whatnot. But like the criminal speeding crime itself, I'd have to say just sounds so like fabricated by the state of Arizona, a place that like didn't recognize Martin Luther King as a person until like I think a couple years ago, and like
is that true?
Yeah, like they didn't like.
They should just call criminal speeding MLK.
Right? Yeah,
were you MLK?
Yeah, I'm surprised he didn't take your passenger into custody for your speeding. And it's just like it's such a wild place to begin with that you would think that they would be like cool, but they're not, and it's stupid and lame, and the whole process is dumb. So I give it 2 out of 5 bears.
2 out of 5 bears. Yeah, to catch you up, we rate the petty crime.
Oh, yeah.
and it's pretty open ended as far as what the rating means or what the scale is. But
it's a fun thing to do.
Yeah, I'm going to say criminal speeding. I think I agree with you on 2 out of 5 bears because I wouldn't go any lower than that because, again, we do need to regulate in some ways. And, like, there's probably 17-year-olds who just got their license who, if they know that it's, like, there's not any real consequences, who knows what they're going to do. But it should be that bare minimum. Honestly, like, I wonder if there's a way... And this is also like a future state thing where you just agree it's like either I'll pay the penalties and I'll drive freely, or there's a computer in my car and whenever it hits the speed limit, it just knows to stop and it won't even allow me. And if there's ever a situation, it means like it wasn't my fault and I can't be held accountable for it.
I think that machine's called the speedometer.
No, but where it doesn't allow you, where it it takes control.
No, you want the choice to be able to speed in case you need to.
Right.
What if there's no hospital around? Lou's not from Arizona. He's speeding to get to the next place available in order because his passenger
take
is
a
dying.
shit. You have to take a shit really bad.
Well, it's funny you say that because I remember one of the guilt trips that the officer tried to give me was that we were so far from a hospital. So if anything happened and like we went off the road and there was an accident, it would take a long time, for someone to get out to me to help.
I'm sure that's the first thing on his mind.
Yeah, there was the very first thing on
They'd have to speed to get there. What do you
Yeah.
They'd also have to commit the same crime you just pulled me over for.
All right. So out of 5 bears, how would you rate criminal speeding?
You know, I'm gonna give it a 3, only because I feel like if there's an element of being of recklessness that might play a role. Just speeding itself, but you know, if you're getting behind cars and stuff, you might be something to
Might
check
be
out.
endangering
Yeah,
people.
yeah.
If you're not fresh off the high of a comedy festival show, then you got no excuse.
I think I performed at 2 shows, and one of them, just to give you an idea, one of them there was a dude who was just talking throughout the whole fucking set of a comedian that was going up that was on there, and then it turned out he was one of the comedians and he was on next.
Wow.
So it was like, geez,
You love to see it. Well, this has been Bushwick Bears Petty Crime Review. Lou, do you want to give the folks some credits, where to find you, your Twitter?
Yeah. You can check me out on all social medias at the Lou Perez. It's Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, all that.
Awesome.
Bushwick Bears Petty Crime Review.